Good evening and welcome to the State of Scottish Football. We are live across Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube. Anywhere you can find us, we're there. As you might see on the screen below me, we're actually got a new sponsorship by Ative Watches. So have a look out for them and look out for you, you debutants. We've got Hybe. Are you pundit onto our show? Are you a contributor? And it's Mr. Craig Leach. Craig, a warm welcome to the show. Craig hosts the. Craig, you can maybe expand a little bit more, but you host the Hibs podcast, do you?
Well, I'm a pundit on a Hibs Talk, so we're on a bit of a wee break at the moment. But we've been going for about 3-4 years. I used to be on Monday Night Football as well, which was a radio show primarily about Hibs and Hearts for a couple of years. So, but now it's just Hibs Talk. So sometimes host, but more often than not, just a contributor.
In other words, folks, he's upgrading on the State of Scottish Football, so we'll let him off for that. And of course, we're joined by the legend that is Dr. Grant Campbell. So first and foremost, guys, by the way, yes, Rangers, of course, are in action tonight in the Czech Republic. Our source, Dr. Grant Campbell, will be keeping us very much up to date. 17 minutes gone. Is that right, Grant? It's still 0-0?
Yeah, just over 50 minutes played. Still goalless. Fairly even start to the game. Rangers look quite good going forward, but I do think that Sparta are also dangerous as well. So it looks like it's a decent game so far.
Of course, we spoke a bit about Rangers last night, previewing tonight's game. And to be honest, we didn't really go more into the Celtic side of things. So let's look at tonight. Grant, Craig, we'll start with yourself. How can Ange Postecoglou set Celtic up to defeat Bayer Leverkusen this evening?
I think it's going to be quite difficult for them no matter what way they set up. The amount of injuries that they've got to contend with, like Kyogo missing, he's a massive miss for them in terms of the way that they press from the front. I think we've seen, was it the weekend there, that Ayeti's just not that kind of player. So I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I'm totally clued up on how Bayer Leverkusen play, but from what I've looked into and had a quick look, they're very susceptible to balls coming in for the wide areas. So I think it's important that Celtic try and get the ball out wide as quick as they can and try and get balls in the box for players like Ayeti, whoever's coming off the right or left hand side, whether it be Jota, to go and attack them.
Absolutely. Grant, we all know about the height and the weight of Bayer Leverkusen, but for Celtic, is this an opportunity to proclaim themselves in a way?
Well, in some ways, and I don't like to use the term free hit, but Leverkusen are a very good team. They've started extremely well in the Bundesliga. I think they are up at the top with Bayern Munich. I think they've won 4 of their first 5 so far. They've looked really assured. They have a lot of pace. They've got a lot of quality in the middle of the pitch, and you would think it'll be a tough night for Celtic. But the one thing that I think gives Celtic a bit of a chance tonight is the fans, because Celtic Park under the lights in a European game, just can't beat it. How many times have we seen Celtic pull off a great result in the past in Europe? Yes, their form at the moment hasn't been great in Europe. I think their really last great result they've had was that double header over Lazio. It's absolutely fantastic to see that. They need a result tonight to kind of kickstart their tournament, really. And in some ways, Leverkusen come into this with kind of everything to lose, because they are probably the favourites coming into this. Celtic, as we know, have not a lot of options because of injuries and things like that. So in some ways, Ange has got a bit of a free ride on this, but at the same time, you want to put in a good performance, and Celtic have to give a good account tonight.
Craig, does domestic form for Celtic, is that a worry?
Not going into a European game, because it's a complete different kettle of fish. I mean, domestically, Celtic are expected to win most, if not all, their games. European nights, like Grant said, there's just, even as a non-Celtic fan, you can sense there's something about a European night at Parkhead under the lights. The way that the crowd get behind them. We've seen it in the past that the crowd have carried them to victories. Barcelona, prime example. Now, this Leverkusen team aren't anywhere near the level of Barcelona, but they are going to be a difficult team for Celtic to try and get at. I think it's important to try and start the way they started in Spain. If they can attack Leverkusen, because it felt like at times that Betis couldn't live with Celtic going forward. If they can do that, then I think they stand a chance. But no, I don't think that domestic form carries too much, because they go into the game tonight as an underdog rather than an overwhelming favourite like they usually are, and this could actually help them build that sort of underdog spirit within the side.
Of course, we've like a dig in this show, and we're going to have a wee dig here. Obviously, in the last few weeks, Celtic have imploded, and being a Hibs fan, you may be a little bit disappointed you've not been able to capitalise on that a little bit, considering you don't play them until later on down the line.
It would have been nice, because I think that the way that we've certainly started the season, we could have gave them some problems. It'll be exciting to see how we match up on Sunday against Rangers at Ibrox. But it is quite, I think, especially with Kyogo being out, how he started when he came in, it's kind of, if you wanted to play Celtic at any point, it would be now with Kyogo missing, Julian still missing, McGregor missing. I think James Forrest is still missing. So they're missing almost a core of the attacking side that, we would have, I think Hibs would have enjoyed playing against. So hopefully they're still in implosion mode by the time we face them.
Grant, we touched upon the players last night, such as your Wirtz and the other attacking players they have, and Jeremy Frimpong is also, because Frimpong towards the end of his tenure at Celtic was very impressive, and that's why Anders moved to the Bundesliga. But from a Celtic point of view, is it about being compact and trying to get a low block to thwart the attacking flair that Leverkusen have?
I think they just have to be resolute defensively. I think that's something that we've not seen from Celtic all season. Is defensively they're giving teams opportunities. I think the centre-back partnership has been well documented. I don't think Ange has got the right balance in that centre-back area. Obviously, it looks like no Juranovic tonight, so it could be a big night for Montgomery playing at left-back, which I feel could be a bit of an area that Leverkusen will look to expose. But for me, the midfield battle, gentlemen, is going to be very important tonight. It's a big night potentially for David Turnbull, who simply for me has to keep improving. I think he's kind of tailed off after his hat-trick he scored earlier on in the season in the Premiership. Tom Rogic, for me, good player, still a very competitive player, still a match winner, but kind of loosening up and kind of lacking that kind of goal-scoring prowess that we've seen in big games from Rogic that we haven't seen for a while. I think it's a big night for the front three. If they are going to play Abada, Jota, and Ayeti, that's going to have to work well. Because I think Abada, for me, has been Celtic's best player this season. I think Jota shows a lot of promise. I think he needs to work on his finishing a little bit, but I think he's got a lot of quality. And we know Ayeti, gets a lot of criticism, but, you've got a lot of players out at the moment like Kyogo and obviously other options like Giacomakis unavailable as well. It's a big night for Albi and Ayeti, and if Celtic are going to win this game, their front players have to not only attack well, but they've got to defend well as a unit. And I always say defense starts from the front. Your team have to defend as a unit, but they also have to attack as a unit. I feel that Celtic sometimes this season are playing in bits and pieces. Their front line are doing a lot of attacking, but the defence aren't switched on when they're getting broken upon. I mean, we saw that in the Betis game, particularly at the end of the first half, where they really conceded two very poor goals. Intrigued to see if Sorrow plays over McCarthy. That's the big question mark for me. Is McCarthy fit? One. But two, is Sorrow's discipline going to be a big factor? Because let's be honest, he could have been sent off in Spain. So it's a big night for Ange, and I'm looking forward to seeing what team he puts out tonight.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, there's been a question came in here saying, why has the guy with the beard got his cam under the table? I'd just like to clarify on air right now that the guy with the beard has had technical issues with his laptop. So he's played through the pain barrier just to be here tonight. So I think Dr. Grant Campbell deserves enormous praise just to be here, first and foremost. And Grant,
someone's very observant.
We'll stick with yourself. Ange Postecoglou has questioned the narrative that his team are struggling ahead of tonight's game. Grant, do you think they're struggling, or do you think it's just a case that things aren't going well just now?
I think it defines what you mean by struggling. I think in terms of are they getting the results, then yes, they are struggling because, they've lost every one bar one away game so far in all competitions this season. That, of course, being the first leg in the Czech Republic against Jablonec. But in terms of their play, and I can understand where Ange is coming from to some degrees, Celtic have played, certainly in the home game against Dundee United, they had their chances. They hit the woodwork 3 times. They had a lot of good play in between the lines. Ayeti missed pretty much an open goal from a couple of yards out. Ange can't put the ball in the back of the net for these players. The players have got to do it for him. I think, in some speaking, in Scottish football, the cauldron that is Glasgow, everybody is looking at Rangers versus Celtic. Rangers are top of the table without playing at the top of their game right now. Celtic are where they are because they just cannot get it together on the road. And even at home last week against Dundee United, even when it's not going for them, it wasn't working for them. They were conceding sloppy goals, the Harks goal in particular. They should have conceded the penalty. I think it's difficult because Ange is in some ways tied because of the injuries, but ultimately hasn't helped himself either. There's been a few big decisions whereby he's not taken that proactive approach. Like, for example, last week when Soro was on a booking, for me, the easiest decision to make would be to substitute him at halftime and bring on James McCarthy. Now, I'm not saying Celtic would have still lost the game. They may still have done, but I don't think they would have got in the position where they lost 2 quick goals to go 4-2 down. That's what I think, and I feel that Ange needs to kind of take a step back and think, you're managing Celtic Football Club, you're managing one of the biggest clubs in Scottish football. Is it acceptable? And, quite frankly, a lot of Celtic supporters may disagree with me on this, but it isn't acceptable at the moment. Their form isn't good enough.
12 minutes in, are we still 0-0 Czech Republic, Grant?
Yes, it's still 0-0. Sparta Prague had a good chance. It was a good save from Alan McGregor. Rangers just had an attack there, but Roof just couldn't control, and I think it's gone out for a throw-in. So still goalless here in Prague.
Absolutely. Although you are in Ellen Aberdeenshire, just to clarify.
Well, that's very true.
Yeah, keep your comments.
I sound like one of these guys on Soccer Saturday. It's fantastic.
keep your comments coming in, guys. Much appreciated. Craig, we'll start with a good omen by saying that on this day in 1992 here by tenants Pat saying Celtic beat Cologne on this day 3-0, and they would love a result like this tonight as well.
Absolutely, and I think I don't want to go as far as saying they need it, but like Grant was saying, I don't think that it is acceptable the way that Celtic are, the way their form is at the moment. Yeah, there's a lot of, they've got a lot of injuries. The recruitment style over the summer hasn't been good enough. The time it took to get Postecoglou in the door, Dominic Mackay being appointed and resigning within a couple of months, it's been quite a turbulent sort of period for Celtic since around about June time. And I think a result like that tonight would give the whole club a lift, because I think they need it. It could very quickly spiral if they get a defeat by 1 or 2 goals. It's not the end of the world, but if it's verging on a cricket score, regardless of the issues that Celtic have had off the pitch as well as on it, I think the fans would start to get maybe a wee bit restless. Maybe not towards Postecoglou, but even more restless in terms of the way that they are towards the board in that at the moment.
It's the message, Craig, that it's not mission impossible, and it is winnable, but it's going to be extremely tough.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can point to so many instances. Like I said, Barcelona when they went to Parkhead, AC Milan and Juventus, Man United. Over, you could reel off the top teams in Europe over the years. You only need to look at Real Madrid last night. I think was it last night or the Tuesday night? I think it might have been whatever night it was. Tuesday night. But they got beaten off of Sheriff, who don't even have a country. Do you know what I mean? They're not even in they don't even play in a internationally recognised country. So it just goes to show you that it's not, these type of things can happen in football. It's not as insurmountable as what it was against Barcelona in the past or Man United in the past. But it is going to be hard for them. I don't think there's any shying away from that.
We don't get the comments on Twitter on their bit of the side, but Grant, I'm having a look at a few comments that have came up on Twitter based on our conversation, and somebody's saying here that playing both Turnbull and Rogic in a midfield three doesn't beat anybody, never mind Leverkusen. Do you agree with that?
They are very similar. I do agree with that. To be honest, though, as I said to you earlier on, where's the other options? You got Neo Beaton. Is he the sort of guy that they really need to be playing in a big game like that? Not for me. That's the problem. You lose Ryan Christie, who goes to Bournemouth. Where is the options there? That's got to be the big question, Marky. I think the guy has a very fair point to this question. But it comes back to options. Just a bit of an update for you, David. It is 1-0 to Sparta Prague.
Oh, I'm sure the Celtic fans in this thread will be absolutely delighted by that news.
Yeah, there was a goal from a corner kick. A header come off the far post. McGregor tried to claw it out, and the referee gave the goal the ball hazard judge to have crossed the line. We'll get an idea for the scorer for you in a minute. Okay.
Grant, I'm going to go back to yourself. Let's jump in the Florian Wirtz love bus again, because a good friend of yours was messaging you about an hour ago. Raphael Honigstein. Is he from The Athletic?
Yes, Raphael Honigstein is, of course, on the Totally Football Show, European edition, German football correspondent. Not at the game tonight, but I knew he would have some insight knowledge into Leverkusen.
So we're going to jump in the Florian Wirtz love bus here. He's a terrific young talent.
Absolutely superb player. I mean, I was listening to the 67 Hail Hail podcast before I came on tonight, because Derek Ray was a guest on the show. That was the only reason I tuned in, because I love Derek Ray. I think he's a really big supporter of Scottish football, and his knowledge of German football is absolutely fantastic. And I think he came away with a stat that Wirtz contributes to a Bayer Leverkusen goal or assist every 30 minutes so far this season.
Well, somebody's actually said that, actually.
Absolutely fantastic.
Strange Love the Doctor says here, have you looked at Bayer's squad and form? Florian Wirtz is scoring and assisting every 30 minutes. He is officially the most productive player in Germany this season.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So I'm glad I did my homework before I came on the show for a change. Yeah, no, he's a fantastic talent, and I hear many people are claiming him to be even better than Kai Havertz, who, of course, was formerly of Leverkusen descent. But, he's just a wonderful player. He creates so much. It kind of reminds me a little bit like Iniesta when he was at Barcelona, the way it kind of integrates himself into that sort of number 8 role, but he kind of is almost between an 8 and a 10, and he can kind of get to the attacking players and just really make himself just a real talent in the middle of the pitch. He works very well, gets in between the lines and creates opportunities, can see a pass, but can score a goal or two as well. And yeah, he'll be a big threat tonight for sure.
Absolutely. Craig, just in the sense of tonight, where is this game won and lost for Celtic, do you feel? Just in any aspect?
I think the comment that we got about Rogic and Turnbull in the middle of the park's a valid one. Like Grant says, where's the other options? But I don't think a midfield of Rogic and Turnbull is leggy enough in terms of being able to work both backwards and we know with Rogic very rarely, if ever, lasts a full 90. Turnbull has been somewhat similar for Celtic since he's been there. I think it's getting the ball for Celtic. Like I said, for Celtic to have any chance at this game, getting a win tonight, they need to get the ball wide and they need to get the ball in the box. Defenders hate as much as defenders love defending, defenders hate, one, people running at them, and two, trying to defend in their own box. Defenders want everything in front of them. They don't want to be on the half turn, trying to judge a header, trying to judge when to press a winger and stand off. They want the ball in front of them. So for Celtic to get any positive result tonight, I do believe that it's going to come for down the wings. And I think that, dependent on what the position is at left back, whether it be Montgomery, him being a converted almost winger, might end up working. Because I believe that's where Tierney started as a left winger. And we all seen what happened. Not that I'm saying that Montgomery's going to reach the levels of Tierney, but Montgomery has that attacking instinct in him to get forward, especially if you've got a right footer coming in off the wing, and then Montgomery could go on the overlap. So it's definitely down the wings for me for Celtic to get a result tonight. But they need to be solid in the middle.
Yeah, just to come on to your point there, Craig, and I think that's really interesting. Do you think that maybe they should go to 3 centre halves tonight, and then maybe play a 4 in midfield with Montgomery as that inverted fullback, if you like, in that 4?
Well, you could, because it would work with Ralston on the other side.
Because David and I were talking last night about maybe Scales playing in that back 3 with Carter Vickers and Starfelt, for example. That could potentially be an interesting one for Ange to try. I don't think you would try it, but you just never know.
Yeah, I think we've seen in football recently over the last sort of 5-6 years this almost 3-5-2, 5-3-2 kind of formation making a comeback. I know that Hibs have been extremely successful using it over that period of time. There's still some Hibs fans that demand the 3-5-2 comes back on a regular basis. So if you've got the personnel and you've got the way, and you get the setup right, it absolutely can work, because you can just completely load the middle of the park while having options out wide as well. So it is. I suppose it is an option, but maybe Scales, just maybe too big a game for Scales to come into.
Could maybe Welsh, that would be interesting as well. I still don't get the understanding why Welsh has been dropped to the bench in recent weeks.
I think the high profile of Carter Vickers coming in. Plus, you look at him, he's a unit. He's a big guy. But they're going to in the central areas. They're going to need to be strong and compact, and they're going to need to get the ball wide when they can and take their chances when they can. Yeah,
it was David Hanchko that scored for Sparta Prague, David, just to come in and just clean that up from Eller.
Okay, fantastic. One thing I've gathered from Bayer Leverkusen, this is courtesy of Celtic Trends, who do a lot of fantastic work, and they provide a truly quality piece of journalism, even though they're probably not journalists within themselves. They're really good in terms of getting the ball out in the wide right, Grant. And one player to watch out for from a Celtic point of view tonight will be Karim Bellerby.
Yeah, there's a few interesting other players that I think will do a job. He's one that is one. I think Diaby will be another one. The relationship that he has with Jeremy Frimpong will also have a real benefit in the game. Well, I know Derek Ray said on this on the podcast I listened to earlier on, he doesn't think Frimpong might start tonight. I'm quite unsure about that. I just think that Frimpong coming up against the whole team might just be the story that everybody is kind of keeping an eye out for.
And of course, us Scotsmen, we did want to mention it, but a certain Strange Love the Doctor keeps coming up with Patrick Schick. I mean, he's a bad name to us Scots considering what happened in the Euros, but Craig, he's just a quality player, isn't he?
He is. I remember he was at Roma. I don't know if he played for Roma. I don't know exactly when he played for Roma, but I know he was linked with 30-40 million pound move to the Premier League. I know that's almost chump change with the figures that get thrown around English football just now. But you don't play regularly for Roma or Bayer Leverkusen if you're not a great player. And like you mentioned, he's not a big. We're not a big fan of him, but the technique he showed to score that goal at Handon shows you what a talented player that he is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just in terms of tonight, Grant, where in terms of Celtic system, what do you think is the right system for Celtic? Because Bayer Leverkusen are renowned for playing a 4-2-3-1. Do you think Celtic should go match for match, or do you think they're capable of the 4-3-3 and adapting? What do you think?
I don't think Ange will match up for the simple reason that he has his principles, he has his style of play, And I think Celtic are at home. Their fans are expecting them to come and have a bit of a go. And I think it would be a bit strange if they then decided to change formation to what they have already done before. I mentioned to Craig earlier on about the possibility of maybe Montgomery and Ralston playing in the sort of four in midfield, if you like, almost like with Montgomery on the left side of the four and Ralston on the right, with maybe McCarthy and Rogic, for example, in that central area, which still allows you that front three. But I don't know. I think it's going to be very difficult to see how they'll do it tonight, Celtic, because there could be a danger of them getting overrun. They could go 4-5-1 and try and flood the midfield, but they could get undone that way. I think it's really, really difficult to see what they'll do tonight. And as I said, I will be so intrigued to see how this lineup will shape up.
Thanks very much for sending your comments. A lot of debate in this midfield that we're on about here. Craig, do you agree when people are saying about parking the midfield for Celtic this evening?
I think they need to. They definitely need to try and stop Wirtz from getting on the ball in dangerous areas. Anyway, like Grant said earlier on about sort of playing in between the lines and picking his passes between the lines. They need to stop that because if they don't, it could be a very long night for them. The issue that they've got is, I'm not sure if there's a chance that McGregor could make it. I know I've seen something from Postecoglou earlier saying that the injured guys they won't all start, but they might get minutes. Callum McGregor being in the midfield for Celtic would certainly give them a massive boost. And just in terms of that central area, trying to get as tight to Wirtz as possible to stop him doing his magic. Admittedly, I'm not going to pretend like I've seen his top 10 goals on YouTube sort of compilation, but from the bits and pieces that I've seen, he is extremely talented, and he could have, if he's afforded the time and space that a player like him needs, he could absolutely flourish tonight. So definitely flooding the central area and trying to stop him from getting on the ball has got to be part of the game plan.
Grant, I very much apologise for asking you this question coming up, but it's safe to say that your glass is very much empty right now regarding Aberdeen, and tonight's a potential or a possibility for Celtic to start a bit of momentum heading into Pittodrie on Sunday.
Well, I think that's another huge game, and the huge games come thick and fast for Celtic, don't they? And, it's the pressure of being Celtic manager. It's the pressure of being a Celtic player and a fan. If you don't play well and you don't get results, tension mounts and pressure mounts. And Sunday is a huge game for Postecoglou because Celtic are so far adrift of Rangers at the top of the table already. They want to go into the international break with some form of comfort and looking like there's potentially some progress being made after what has been a slow start. But let's say they didn't win tonight and they lost at Pittodrie, which I think would be absolutely sensational if Aberdeen were to win the game, considering Aberdeen's dreadful start to the season. You really do worry for Postecoglou. That would be a pretty tough few days if that happens.
Craig, on Postecoglou, is this a big 3 days for Postecoglou, do you feel?
It could be, like I said earlier, if it's a plucky defeat that they get tonight, then like was mentioned earlier, it can always be mentioned that it was a free hit anyway. We've got so many players out, etc., etc. But going to Pittodrie with Aberdeen being on a poor run at the moment, if Celtic don't come away with there with 3 points, then I think questions would start to get asked, because regardless of the level of players that Celtic have got out, they've still got enough in their team to be getting a win at Pittodrie. The finances involved at Celtic dictate that they should still have enough in the tank, even if they're missing 3, 4, 5 first teamers. So depending on how the result goes tonight, it'll either have the fans sort of, all right, well, at least we gave it a shot. But if it's a bad result, and I'm talking, a 3-4 goal deficit, then I think the pressure could start to ramp up going into Sunday. And then that brings another added pressure of itself. You've got, Stephen Glass under pressure already himself. Scott Brown up against his former club, that he's served with distinction for 14 years. it's got all the makings to be a classic but short corner. Sky decide not to show things like that or the top of the table clash, which could have had all of us, intrigued and watching it to see how it unfolds. We'll just need to wait for Sports Scene.
Absolutely. Grant, we love to be tactical on this show. You're a tactical scientist, let's say. A question's came in here from Brown Warrior saying, or what his opinion is, sorry, 4 at the back with Beaton as the DMF creates a back 5 in defence. Agree with that?
Yes, that is also another option. That also wouldn't be the worst way of playing it, but I don't know if that means that they will lose that impetus going forward. But I know that Beaton does do reasonably okay in the big European games, and I know he's had a really difficult start to the season. He hasn't looked particularly good in the past at central defence. A lot of Celtic fans are not massive supporters of Nir Beaton, but perhaps needs must tonight. Perhaps it is a big game for him, and perhaps he can sort of reignite his Celtic career a little bit, because it's kind of blown out over the last while.
Absolutely. So me and Grant gave our predictions last night. I went for 2-0 Leverkusen. Grant went for 2-1 Leverkusen. You're right, Grant?
2-1 Leverkusen, yes. Yeah. I'm still sticking
Craig,
to that. I think Celtic will get a goal tonight. I think it'll be a lot closer than a lot of people think.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig, what are you thinking for tonight?
I'd like to see them get I'll go 1-1. I think they'll manage to scrape a draw.
If Celtic get the first goal tonight, David, that will give the fans massive, massive belief that they can get something. If they don't get the first goal, it could be a long night for them. I think that's huge if they get the first goal, Celtic.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for all your Celtic comments. Much appreciated. Grant, half-time in Czech Republic yet?
Yeah, it's just about nearing the end of first half stoppage time. It's still 1-0 to Sparta Prague. Rangers have lost Bakuna, who has gone off injured. So that's a big loss to Rangers, on top of more injuries and COVID situations and suspensions, and that's another big player to lose in the midfield. So Hadji is on for Rangers. But to be honest, Sparta are pretty comfortable at the moment without really looking like doubling their advantage. But they remain 1-0 up.
Absolutely.
And it's half-time. It's literally half-time now.
Fantastic. Great timing, Grant. Great timing. So next up in this show, we're going to speak about Ian Harkes. Ian Harkes, if you don't know, picked up the Premiership Player of the Month for September. Of course, he scored against Celtic at the weekend. But Craig, as far as Ian Harkes is concerned, is the impression in the midfield for Dundee United this time?
Admittedly, I've seen him up close, once when we played Dundee United in the League Cup. I thought he looked tidy. Even at 3-0 down, he was always wanting to sort of get his foot on the ball, try and, he was always, he doesn't like to sort of take the ball and go backwards or sideways. He's always got his head up and looking to pass the ball forward, which I think any supporter loves to see from the midfielder. And he, surprisingly for me, he's got a decent engine on him. He was still going at 90 minutes after the last Thursday when Hibs won 3-1 up at Tannadice. So I think he's a definite, well-deserved recipient of the reward, and his goal against Dundee was a brilliant finish as well. So it shows he's got sort of as an almost central going towards an attacking midfielder. He's got sort of everything that you'd look for, really. He's got the passing range. He's got the engine to get back and forwards up the pitch, and he's also got that sort of sweet right foot for the outside the box as well.
Grant, he's a Tannadice terror, isn't he?
Yeah, he's been very good this season, Harkes. I think that United have, just needed that little bit of creativity in midfield, and that's what Harkes has given them this season. He's looked really, really good. As Craig mentioned there, scored that excellent goal in the Dundee derby, and I thought his header against Celtic was a fantastic flashing header in at the near post to give Joe Hart no chance. I think he's going to be a big player for United this season in terms of an attacking sense, because United are not going to be blessed by scoring loads of goals, but I don't think they're a team that's going to concede much either. And I think if they're going to have that person who gives that X factor in terms of trying to win tight games, Harkes is certainly developing into that player.
Craig, you alluded to the Dundee derby there. In that game in question, he had 48 touches. He completed 25 out of 29 passes, 2 chances created. He gained possession 8 times within the game. 4 shots, scored a 1-0 winner in his last in that game in question. Sorry, which was the first Dundee derby in the top flight since 2016. Phenomenal stats that day in question.
No, it is, and it alludes to the fact that he, like I said, he can do a bit of everything in the middle, but it's not like he's a jack of all trades, master of none. He's he is that sort of that typical looking at a football manager style box to box midfielder. Like you say, gained possession. What was it? 8 times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So 8. Those. I'm not a massive statistical man, but to me that strikes me as a decent number for someone who's also putting out a big creative output. So no, it was definitely a good performance, and like I said, I think he's a well-deserved recipient of the award, because when I seen him up close last weekend at last Thursday, at Tannadice, I was really impressed with him. I thought he had a really good game.
Grant, time for a Man United question, sir. The midfield 3 that Dundee United have, and Jandro Fuchs, Dylan Levitt, of course, being on loan from Manchester United, and Harks. They've strung up a really fantastic partnership in midfield for Dundee United this term so far.
Yeah, they certainly have. It's a good balance of composure, discipline, and quality. And Levitt looks very impressive. He was very good in the youth setup at Manchester United. I follow the very excellent weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast hosted by my great friend Keane Franey. And the guys on that show really talk up guys like Levitt and guys like Ethan Galbraith, who's breaking into the Northern Ireland setup very, very strongly on a regular basis. And he's a very young guy. I think going to Dundee United is the perfect club for him to keep developing his journey and himself as a player. But I just think that balance in the field that Dundee United have is very interesting. I think there's a good bit of energy in there. And Fuchs, I think, has been outstanding this season. He's got that real kind of desire and determination. He reminds me of a guy who plays for Larne in Northern Ireland called Fuad Sule. He's a little guy, but he's a really powerful player, really gets in. He's a bit of a destructor, wins the ball, but he's also very technically gifted in possession. And Fuchs reminds me of him. I think he's a really good talent. But I just think Dundee United this season will be an interesting nut to crack, especially at Tannadice, because that midfield can interchange quite well. If they could get up to the forward players, they can really make a difference. But crucially, I think they could get in and do the dirty stuff as well. And that's what things with United had to do really well at Celtic Park at the weekend. They all got in and they did their jobs. I mean, we could talk about the Fuchs potential sending off as a talking point. I personally thought that was a very strong yellow card, maybe even a red as well. It was certainly on that boundary. But, I think Dundee United are going to be an interesting team to watch. And for me, if they could keep that kind of energy going, they could definitely sneak into the top 6 this season.
Grant, I'll stick with yourself on Levitt. He's done enough to merit himself in the Wales squad, and that just speaks volumes for how he started the season with Dundee United.
Well, absolutely, and you make a good point about the Welsh team. They're a team that I think have always really given youth a chance. Robert Page has gone in the past with people like Dan James, who obviously has now gone to Leeds United, having been at Manchester United, and there's a lot of young guys like Ampadu, who's been making his trade in the Italian league, really coming in. So it's really positive to see young guys like Levitt really given their chance to shine. Whether they'll get games for Wales and whether they'll get minutes in the upcoming matches remains to be seen. But it's definitely progression for him in his career, for sure.
Craig, it's probably a sign of where Hibs are at right now. And you probably look at last week and go, what a magnificent result when you look at how Dundee United started the season. Yeah,
and I mean, it was a very lucky, we were very lucky to be in 3-0 up at half time. The first goal was a brilliant bit of play from Scott Allen and Joe Newell. The second one was, a bit of a mix up in the middle, and Scott Allen put it away. And then the penalty was never a penalty. Like, let's be serious, it wasn't. So we were very lucky to go in 3-0 up. I think there's such a difference from Dundee United last season to what they were under Mickey Mellon. For me, watching Dundee United last season, they were very rigid, and they played. It was almost like they played a 4-3-3, but they played 3 centre forwards as the 3. So they had McNulty, they had Nicky Clark, and they had Lawrence Shankland. and they weren't getting any chances. There's McNulty's. We've seen McNulty do it from Livingston to Sheffield United. Even the spell he was at us the first time, he was really productive. Shanklin's record speaks for himself, and they never got chances. And Mickey Mellon constantly talked his side down, tried to play down, the experience levels that they had in the team. Whereas I think Thomas Court's done the complete opposite this season, and he's actually talking his side up. He's trying to instill, a better sort of level of confidence in his team from a fan's perspective. You watch his interviews after the game, and he's almost a breath of fresh air. He's like, he's sort of this new. We're now starting to see the first sort of levels of like technical younger coaches, sort of coming into the game. I think Cathro was a bit far out his depth when it came to the media side of things, but I think Courts is along the same lines in terms of he thinks a lot about the game analytically rather than just looking at a player and going, aye, he'll do. The very sort of numbers driven. And I definitely think that I agree with you, Grant. They've definitely got a chance of sneaking into the top six because they've got a better way of playing football now. And they were very, I think I checked the stats on the way home after I think they had maybe 57, 58% possession.
They look more assured than, say, Aberdeen are at this stage. You made a really interesting point there about it being different to when Mellon was manager. I definitely agree with that to a large point. But what I will say about what Mickey Mellon did very well was he made his Dundee United teams very tough to break down. I don't think Coates has changed too much in terms of the philosophy within Dundee United. I just think maybe there's a little bit more energy in the team. That's maybe the way I see it.
Yeah, and I think obviously also more energy coming from the manager as well.
Correct.
Like even, like I said, the way he presents himself to the media, he's even if it's not the result they want, he's always trying to put the positive spin on it. Whereas Mickey Mellon, you could never tell if Dundee United had won 4-0 or lost 4-0. There was never a real change in sort of his tone or demeanour.
I
absolutely hate being self-conscious here, right? But I got a cheeky wee wink from Tam Courts at the press conference today compared to other broadcast journalists. And I'm like, what the hell have I done here? It must have been the questions I asked last week. I really don't know. But Grant, our very good friend John Blaisdell, I was speaking to him this morning, and I was speaking about Kerr Smith at the back, who did very well at Celtic Park at the weekend there. And John asked me, who's Kerr Smith? And I had to go and send him an article that was in the Courier back in July, where it's reported that every single English Premier League club had an interest in Kerr Smith. He's just been a breath of fresh air in that backline. But one thing that I've took out of Kerr Smith is he's got good leaders and good mentors, and Reynolds, Ryan Edwards, and also Charlie Mulgrew.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in terms of their development, they'll help him no end. I thought he was excellent at Celtic Park on Sunday. He's got a very bright future. I think we've got a lot of really good young talent coming through across Scotland, don't you think, guys? I mean, not just young Smith, obviously, at Dundee United, but obviously Doig at Hibs. You've got Patterson at Rangers. You've got Ramsey. Yeah, I said that. Mackenzie and Ramsey at Aberdeen. There's a lot of really good young talent coming through. Haven't even talked about Welsh, I think, at Celtic, who's maybe a little bit older, but I think the future is bright, and people like Steve Clarke, people across Scottish football and even the English leagues, as you mentioned there, David. Maybe somebody should be having a look up here at some of our younger talent coming through, because we've got a lot of good players coming through across quite a lot of teams.
A player I love, and I'm not saying this because I cover Dundee on a regular basis, but one player I love this moment in time is Max Anderson for Dundee.
Yes, another great player, another phenomenal young talent that I don't think will be at Dundee that much longer. You look at some of the young guys coming through. I think St Johnstone have got a few younger guys coming through. You mentioned obviously Dundee. I mentioned there about Doig at Hibs. It's exciting to see, and Motherwell have always been blessed with bringing younger guys through too. So I think the future's bright for a lot of clubs in Scottish football of some young talent coming through. And if Steve Clarke looks at the big picture, maybe not right now, but maybe the next 4 or 5 years, there's definitely scope there.
Craig, we spoke about Harks' goal in the derby, and he scored at the weekend at Celtic Park as well. But what you get from Harks as well is no shortage of dig.
No, exactly. Like I said, he can do both the defensive, as mentioned, with the possession gain stat, and also the offensive in terms of how many chances he created and how many shots he's having at goal. I think he's one of the ones that's flourished from the more energy, like Grant said, Dundee United having a bit more energy in the middle of the park. It's almost, that Harks knows that he's almost got that freedom to go forward because that Fuchs will be able to sort of sweep up behind him if need be. So he's definitely, I think he's been at Dundee United now for what, 3-4 years? Because I vaguely remember him. I think he might have played against Hibs in the Championship when we were still there. I might be mistaken, but he's definitely showing now that he's. What is he? 24, 25?
I think so.
Yeah, he's definitely coming into his own. At this level, and he's making himself a sort of almost one of the first names on the team sheet for Dundee United.
In fact, we've been very complimentary in Hacks here because he's actually 26-year-old.
26. There you go.
Okay, thanks very much for continuing sending your comments. Obviously, a big game for Celtic in European action tonight. Grant's the second half starting in Czech Republic yet?
Not quite yet. It won't be too far away. I'm not sure if Steven Gerrard will make changes. I know he obviously had to make one before half time, but I thought Rangers were really poor in the first half. They really struggled for any bite, for lack of creativity. And as I said, Sparta were more than comfortable in that first half. I think he needs to change something, but what, I'm not 100% sure.
Absolutely. Right, on to the SWPL. It goes without saying, if you get 5,000 a crowd into a football ground of any stretch of imagination, it's usually in men's championship or indeed men's premiership football with some clubs. But Craig, I think it's only right that we start with yourself with this. What a terrific and sensational crowd we had at Easter Road last night for the Edinburgh Derby between Hibs and Hearts women. Obviously, you weren't in the game because you had dad commitments to go and do. But fantastic to get that amount of crowd to a women's game at Easter Road. It was 5,512, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So Hibs announced it a couple of weeks ago that they were. Because I think they do it once every so often that the ladies team get to play at Easter Road because they currently play. I think they just signed. They've been at Ainsley Park for I don't know how many years, but they're now currently playing at the Tony Macaroni. And every so often they get a chance to play at Easter Road. I think the last time was maybe the Champions League game against Bayern Munich. And obviously with Hibs having, we've got Ron Gordon now, we've got Ben Kinsell, who's the new CEO. They've made it quite clear that they want to bring the ladies team under the banner, if you will, of the full football club, and it's currently operated by the Community Foundation. So they are making their commitment to the ladies team. The ladies team also got their own shirt sponsor, Barry Wilkins, who does the stadium announcing at Easter Road.
Yeah.
His marketing company have agreed to sponsor the.
Is that MB Media?
MB Media, yeah, are sponsoring the front of the ladies' shirts, which I believe was for a 5-figure investment.
Okay, fantastic.
Which is great money going into the ladies' team, especially because it's managed by the Community Foundation at this moment in time. But on to the actual, like you said, I wasn't at the game, but I think women's football still has a lot to do to win over the general public. The sort of the ones that maybe aren't as diehard at football is what the sort of core of us are. But to see, 5,500 out supporting them, a lot of kids as well, that's something that we shouldn't forget. Is not only is this about supporting women and giving them the right to go and play their football on a stage, that their talent should be afforded, but also about getting the next generation involved. These 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old girls being able to see, players like Rachel Boyle, Siobhan Hunter, etc., playing at Easter Road, that can only serve to drive them on. I remember when I started playing football, if you came up against a girl, as for schools football or your boys club, it was almost like, well, this doesn't. Why is there a girl playing? Whereas now at Edina Hibs, who I'm coaching my son's under 2010s team, they've got a dedicated girls team, and other clubs have now got dedicated girls teams. And you're only going back 20 years to when I played, so it's massive strides in the last 20 years, and it's very much deserved. And for the photos that I've seen and the footage that I've seen for last night, it looks like the crowd and the ladies had a had a great time. So well done to them.
Absolutely. And a fantastic performance and a fantastic result from Hibs last night, Grant.
Yeah, very good win. They've had a great start to the season, Hibs. I know they lost the game against Celtic at the weekend, but that's a great response against your bitter rivals. And, I think Gibbs is doing a great job at Hibs. They've made a very strong start. I think they'll get in the mix this season to do some damage. And you know what? It's refreshing because, we see Glasgow City, we see Celtic, and we see Rangers being that top three clubs the last couple of seasons. I think if Hibs could get in there and really get in the mix, it could be a very fascinating season.
Absolutely. And just in terms of media coverage, we like to cover any club possible, any positive publicity, we're on it. But we've got to speak negatively here, Craig. Dave Gibson tweeted a photo this afternoon. I think you liked it, in fact, and so did I, Grant. Craig, Dave Gibson tweeted a photo with a report in the Daily Record, and to give a game of that magnitude a lack of coverage is just a little bit frustrating.
No, it is, especially when you've got, it's not like there was nobody there to cover it. Like you said, 5,500. That's more than what St Johnstone get at McDermott Park for a run-of-the-mill league game. How many? Not a lot of clubs will get.
It was more than Dundee St Johnstone last Wednesday night at the Premier Sports Cup.
Yeah, so it just shows that there is that appetite for women's football is there. I know that the tickets for Hibs were free, but I know that there's been a lot of sort of supporter suggestions from it to help sort of if the club are bringing the ladies team under the banner of the club. Things like maybe paying an extra as a bolt-on for your season ticket that allows you to go and attend the women's games for free. I think Ron's got very ambitious plans for the club. I don't know if you've seen the screens at Easter Road, which is I still can't wrap my head around it. I used to love going to Parkhead, Ibrox, and seeing these big, massive screens, and never thinking that Hibs would be able to have something like that. We're tarting up the East Stand. They're doing a lot of things, and I think the women's team will be driven by the fact that Celtic and Rangers went full time as well, because for so long it was Hibs and Glasgow City. Those two clubs were. I know Glasgow City have won the league for 13, 14 years in a row, but in terms of the cup, Hibs won the Scottish Cup 3 years in a row. They won the sort of equivalent League Cup, I think, also 3 years in a row. They were treble double winners. So seeing Celtic and Rangers almost pull away in that aspect will have stung, especially given how successful Hibs have been. So it's only exciting going forward, and the media, like they've shown with everything else, will eventually get in line, because if the demand's there for it, they'll give it the coverage that it deserves. But it should in no way detract from the achievement that both sets of teams, both Hibs and Hearts, got last night, because from what I'm led to believe, Hearts had 7 under-18s playing, so it's quite difficult for them when you're coming up against players like Rachel Boyle, Siobhan Hunter, Joelle Murray, who've played for Hibs ladies team for God knows how many years. So great achievement to both of them, and very well done.
Absolutely. Away from women's football, we're going to obviously positively give them positive publicity. But the Celtic team line has just been announced for this evening, and a few surprises. Celtic lineup is Joe Hart, Anthony Ralston, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Starfelt, Montgomery. Montgomery comes into the team, of course. 3 changes. So Montgomery's one of them. Carl McGregor makes a surprise return to the Celtic lineup. You've got David Turnbull, Abada, Rogic, Jota, and the surprise one, but it's good for a Celtic point of view. Kyogo Furuhashi returns, Grant.
Yeah, it's huge, and I'll give the Celtic supporters a massive boost going into this game tonight. How fit he'll be, we'll wait and see, but I think Ange just played a real blinder tonight by picking that team. If it all works out and these guys are back to their full fitness, I think it's absolutely fantastic. What's also really interesting, David, is that Giacomakis has also made the bench, which is also a positive. He might have a part to play tonight, but I think a lot of Celtic supporters were a bit concerned, a bit worried heading into tonight's game. This is a bit of a confidence booster, I think. They may still not win the game, they may still not get anything out of the game, but it gives them a bit of a chance.
Absolutely. The bench for Celtic is Barca, Spain, Scales, Speeton, Giacomakis, Ayeti, Soros, Shaw, McCarthy, Yuho Guide, if I pronounced that correctly.
You're the guide, yeah. And Welsh.
You're my guide.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Grant. And Welsh. Craig, we'll go back at women's football in a minute just to finish off, but just in terms of that Celtic side, if anybody comes off that bench tonight and goes and plays a pivotal part, you're probably looking at either a Yeti, Gio Komakis, or even at a push Beaton and Scales, just in the sense of how this game could pan out position-wise.
Yeah, especially if, Kyogo and McGregor aren't fit enough to last the full 90. We've seen what Kyogo can offer Celtic. If they can get a solid 55, 60 minutes out of them, even be a goal up, or even if it's, if they're level, bringing on Giacomakis, who I don't believe's made his debut for Celtic yet. We love to see supporters love to see players making their debut, especially with the record that Giacomakis had in the Eredivisie last season. He was it 26 goals in 33 games, something like that, for a team that finished 10th or 11th. Like, that just goes to show the guy knows where the back of the net is. And that could, if Celtic are a goal up, level, goal behind, that could give the supporters a real boost seeing someone like him come off the bench. So, no, surprising team, and it kind of puts my comments about Celtic at the window, mentioning Kyogo and McGregor not playing.
Absolutely. Paul, I just had to go check the Celtic team again there because I just noticed your comment, Paul. I regret to inform yourself that Ayeti is on the bench for Celtic this evening. He went and says in the comment section that need a big performance from Ayeti. Well, I'm afraid so, he's on the bench, so we'll need a big performance from other players in the Celtic strip tonight. Grant, can we get an update from the Czech Republic, please?
Yeah, still 1-0 to Sparta Prague, but a quite an incredible start to the second half. Sparta almost scored in the first 90 seconds. It was a great pass across the box. It surely should have been 2-0, and one of their players hit the post inexplicably. I couldn't believe he missed it. Rangers did have the ball in the back of the net. Sakala turned in a corner kick that the goalkeeper made a great save from, but it was ruled out correctly for offside. Still 1-0.
Yeah. Grant, on the women's football side of things, back to good victories for Rangers over Spartans and Celtic against Motherwell last night.
Yes, convincing wins for two of the informed teams in the league so far. Obviously, they're going to be in a fight with Glasgow City, you would think, for the title. Both were very much in the mix last season. Rangers, very, very convincing against Spartans, and Celtic getting the job done against a Motherwell team that have had a tough start. And they've not really got going, and it'll be a long season, I think, unfortunately, for Motherwell supporters, I feel. But both good wins and both much needed victories as well.
Now, speaking about pulling something out of the box here, you guys might not have noticed this. The 10th of October, international weekend, of course. Hamilton are home to Celtic, 5 p.m. kickoff, of course. They are holding a Jurassic Park event at New Douglas Park. Very surreal, very different, I must say. So it's £2 entry to go to this event at New Douglas Park for a Jurassic Park. It's from 10:30 till 4. But in detail, if afterwards, Hamilton plays Celtic at 5 p.m. and you get free entry. Hamilton are hoping for 4-figure attendance, and Grant, if they can get that 4-figure attendance, it would just be fantastic for Hamilton.
I don't know how that Jurassic Park theme might work. That's quite interesting, quite novel. Yeah, I think any publicity is good for the Scottish women's game, and it's a really interesting initiative, and I wish everyone a happy as well.
Absolutely. We're going to end the show by speaking about James McPake, because he's been offered a one-match ban, which I was on my way home when I found out the news, but he has accepted the offer. James has accepted the offer and will serve the suspension this weekend in the Tay Derby at McDermott Park. Craig McPake will be disappointed to miss the derby at the weekend, but after comments made to Bobby Madden at the weekend, you can maybe understand why he's having to sit in the stand.
You can certainly understand why. It is quite refreshing to hear a manager talk as open and as honest as McPake did. He was quite damning of Bobby Madden and what he said, especially if what he said is accurate. I believe it was something along the lines of why wasn't McLaughlin sent off because of the penalty, and Madden retorted with, well, he missed it anyway. Which negates the point, because if McLaughlin had been sent off, he wouldn't have been on to save the penalty.
Correct.
So it's just another one of these long list of referees that are, we had it on Sunday, with John Beaton. There was 3 penalty shouts for Hibs. One was on Nisbet, one was on who was the other one? Well, there was another one anyway. And the one penalty that we got given was the one that I would say was the least likely one that we should have got. Even the way that this new handball rule has been interpreted, I didn't see how it could have been a penalty. Referees seem to be waking up in the morning and deciding that they're going to be the star of the show, and there's no, you hear the stories of the way that referees speak to not only players and managers, and it's like they're school teachers. They're the high school head teacher talking down to you.
Willie Collum is a head teacher, isn't he? So that's quite ironic, really.
But it's you hear about the way that they talk down to players and managers, almost like, don't talk to me. It is disappointing, but you can see why, with the way that McPake's comments were worded, that he's been offered the ban.
Absolutely. Grant, you'd have full faith in Dave Mackay to run the team as normal, and McPake will do what he has to do in the stands.
Yeah, it's a big game for Dundee at the weekend, isn't it? They've got St Johnstone in the Tayside Derby, which, I think they're one of the... am I right that they're the only team without a win in the league so far, David? They really need to get up and going, and what better opportunity than to do that against your Tayside rivals in St Johnstone, who've had a bit of a mixed start to the season. They've done well in the cups, but they need to get going in the league too. So it'll be an interesting game at McDermott on Saturday.
Yeah, Dundee and Ross County, just to clarify.
Ross County, of course, I'm not one. Of course.
Okay, so that's all we've got time for this evening. Thanks very much for all your comments, much appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed our part. I hope I haven't put you to bed or anything like that. So thanks very much for tuning in. And the Celtic State of Mind will be on at 7:30 to preview the Leverkusen game tonight. They are, of course, on pre-match, half-time and full-time. Listen to them, and they'll give you a much more detailed insight, despite the honest thoughts of our three. I've been David Smith. To my left has been Craig Leach. Impressive debut from the Hibs man. And to my bottom has been Dr. Grant Campbell. Thank you very much, and see you later.